As a medium, my client wasn't the person sitting in front of me, it was the person on the other side.
Welcome to Soul Guide with Vondie Lozano, a show about past lives, life between lives, and this life.
Hey, everybody, I'm Vondie, and I'm really excited to be with you here today and to share about my life as a medium. So, I always love that show, My Life as a Dog. So, my life as a medium, because I found Michael Newton and Life Between Lives through mediumship. So, some of you have heard little bits and pieces of this, but I thought I would share a little bit more of my mediumship journey. So, here we go. So, my life as a medium. I can't believe episode 24. Where has the time gone? So, some of you know I found mediumship and life between lives, and all of my fascination with the afterlife began after I lost my little dog, Mia. This is her when she was a puppy. Someone once asked, "Is that a stuffed animal or a real dog?" That's a real dog. She was wonderful. But there was some stuff that went down right before she died that made it extra hard for me. I don't know. It's probably hard for everybody, for all of you, all the time. But I was inconsolable. My husband didn't know what to do with me. I went to a pet loss counselor, and then, as you'll hear in just a minute, I went to see a medium. But I could barely function, and I've shared about this in my after death communication show. Oh, I see people chiming in. Oh, Beecham, my mediumship teacher is here. Hi, Beecham. So we'll be telling you a little bit about Beecham in just a moment. So I was beside myself. I remember telling people and sharing in one of the episodes that I went to the library the next day because I couldn't bear to be at home because everything reminded me of her. I couldn't go to work because I was too much of a mess. So I went to the library and sat in a big stuffed chair. Didn't read a book, didn't listen to anything, just sat there. That was the best I could do. So I was already doing hypnosis as a marriage family therapist, and one of my hypnosis friends said she had heard about this medium, Beecham Parker, who's with us here today on YouTube. Hi, Beecham. And she said, "Let's go see Beecham." And I came from a Christian background and I had moved beyond it for the most part, but mediums are actually in, I'll just say, the Bible as things you're like not supposed to do. So I was like, I just had so much of that old programming. But I always say, only my little dog could have got me to go so far out of my comfort zone. So let me tell you more. And so, for those of you who are listening, I'm flipping through slides. If you wanted to see them, you can watch on YouTube or Facebook, but I'm just narrating exactly what you would see. So, she invited me to a spirit circle, which is a group of people going to connect with their loved ones with the medium. So, as opposed to a one on one session. And so, Beecham gave us information and said, "Oh, and I see people joining us. Wonderful." And said, "Don't tell me anything about your loved one. So if you decide you want to see a medium, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Beecham in a minute, they're really big. And he always tells me, tell people, don't give me any information because he wants to give you the information so that he can tell you that it's really your loved one. So he doesn't want to know anything, even that you lost your dog, just that you have a loved one you lost." So he connects with people and pets on the other side, and so I was really afraid, but I went. In fact, I brought my friend Nikki with me. We went together. There was just maybe 5 people there, and everyone else was there for lost people, lost loved ones. I was the only one there for a dog, and he let us record it, and through the whole recording, you can hear me just like just like crying through the whole thing, but it was amazing. And he said that she had already started to connect with him before he even started, that I think he was in the shower or something and he was hearing the song, "How Much Is That Doggy in the Window?" So he said she was already there. And so when he did the circle and he opened up for messages, she came through first. And again, you can hear me sobbing through the recording, but he just said thing after thing after thing that was really specific. He's what you call an evidentiary medium. So he gives you evidence that it's your loved one before he gives you the messages. Because anybody can just say, "Oh, your loved one loves you, they miss you." But when he says really specific things like she had trouble breathing, and the way it works is he starts to have trouble breathing, which is him knowing what the lost loved one experienced, whether it's a pet or a person. And she had, I don't want to get too into this, but she had a tumor in her sinuses. And she was having trouble breathing. And then he said, something tastes really terrible. And they had sent us the wrong medicine. When she was near the end, they were giving us some medicine to relieve pain. And they had sent us stuff for kids instead of for dogs. So it was like bubble gum or really candy flavored. And she hated it. And he said, there's something really terrible tasting. And then even something as simple as, he said, there's something shiny like around her neck. And, her collar had I had this little shiny bedazzled little tag on it. And then the other thing he said was, I'm getting the word Lily. And I was like, Lily, that's my sister's dog. That's not my dog. Well, apparently Lily was trying to connect. Sometimes this is their opportunity to kind of get a message to their loved one. So my sister's Boston Terrier was making an appearance too. So this is just a handful of the many messages and signs that came through to tell me that he wasn't just saying nice things. It was actually my pet, he calls it fur baby, my fur baby, who was coming through, and he was connecting with her. And so to me, I was just like blown away. And so afterward, first of all, I was a mess. I was a mess just because I was so overwhelmed. And it was so beautiful. And I could say what I wanted to say and ask a couple questions. And she was really close to my husband, Henry. And I said, if she shows up and says, "Where's Henry?" I'm going to be really upset, because that was part of what was going on, is the dynamics had changed when my husband came into the picture. And so that was part of why it was a harder loss for me. But it was so wonderful. In fact, I said something about I loved her, and he said she loved you the best way she could. So the message was really um, appropriate, as opposed to just some sort of platitude. She loved me the best way that she could. Like I was, the disciplinarian in the family. And so it was such a relief. And this is when I had that sense of, first of all, attraction to what happens after we die, and to learn this life is really not the end. And if you are interested in the after death communication, I think it was the second episode, I talk a lot about how when my mom passed, what that looked like, and how I was able to connect with her and get messages and signs. And um, I just became enthralled with the afterlife. So I was a mess, but it was a huge relief, a huge relief. And I just mean a mess, and that I was really emotional. And then I started attending Beecham's workshops because I just wanted to do anything to connect with the other side. That was the only thing that helped with my grief, was connecting with the other side and knowing that this life is not the end. And so I can't remember if it was the first one or second one. He did a spirit guide workshop and a mediumship workshop. But I invited a friend who had lost her dog, and she was like, I thought we were going to a seminar, a lecture. And instead, we're in Beecham's living room dancing to Dancing Queen on his stereo, because he said we had to raise our vibration level. In fact, if you're too much in the fresh grief, he says to wait, because their vibration is so high and ours is so low already. And when we're grieving, it's even lower. So it's just harder to make the connection. So he was having us just do something fun to get us in the mood. And they, as he was saying, they love fun, they love singing, they love us being in our joy. So we were all singing and dancing to Dancing Queen, the ABBA song, and having a great time at his workshop and learning how to connect with the other side and giving messages to each other from their loved ones, and connecting with our own people. And then again, since connecting with the afterlife was what really brought me comfort, because I was still pretty intensely in my grief, I was doing a lot of this on my own. He taught us, how to open up, how to connect. And so I was doing it on my own, and he was kind of semi coaching me sort of informally on the side. And I was getting some hits. I was connecting with some people. And so he realized, okay, she's out there doing this on her own. I think maybe she needs some help. So he invited me to his training group, which is called a development circle, a mediumship development circle. So I trained as a medium for about 3 or 4 months. I loved it. It was a small group, and we would just kind of practice giving messages to each other. And he would give us different ways to do that, and taught us how to open up. And I got some pretty good hits. I think it was Beecham's teacher that had passed that I saw, and I just remember seeing someone in a hospital bed and the dog beside them, and slowly we figured out who it was, and then I was getting some actual legitimate information from someone on the other side. And then the one that was the most significant, again, I shared about this in the after death communication episode, was my neighbor Greg upstairs. I was living in an apartment, had passed. And his neighbor on the top floor right next to him, when I went to tell her, she was just distraught. And she said that she could always hear his music, his John Denver music, and she was going to miss that. And so I did what I had learned to open up and connect, and invited Greg to connect with me. And I heard the song Don't Go Breaking My Heart. And I was like, why am I hearing that? Don't go breaking my heart. And that's how it works. You kind of hear or sense or know or see something. And instead of ignoring it like we all do, you just kind of investigate a little bit. And so I thought, isn't that by Captain and Tennille or something? I grew up in the 70s. Don't Go Breaking My Heart. And then afterwards, I Googled it and it was by Elton John. And so when I went to Greg's funeral, I asked our upstairs neighbor, I saw her there. I said, did Greg listen to Elton John by any chance? And she goes, oh, yeah, Elton John, not John Denver, Elton John. So Greg was telling me to tell her it wasn't John Denver, it was Elton John. And he was also letting me know that he was alive and well. And I gave that information to her too, to let her know he's alive and well. He's connecting with us. This life is not the end. And so, what did we learn in our mediumship training? We learned how to connect with, Beecham calls them spirit people, not dead people. That's why he calls the title of his talk, just because I told him it needs to be kind of catchy. But he usually says spirit people, spirit animals. Um, so it involved a little bit of guided imagery, opening up chakras ourselves. This was part of the process. Opening up our aura, kind of basically making it bigger. And then I was trying to learn how to see auras, which I was able to do just a very little bit. And that's, as best as I understand it, kind of your energy field around you. And then talking and listening to the people. Oh, and we also had to learn to set boundaries so that it's not like in the Long Island medium where just you want people popping in wherever you go and you're kind of um, giving messages to strangers. That's part of a TV show. And I love the Long Island medium, so nothing against her. But I just meant that's not how it's usually done, is you have specific times and days when you're open. So they're not like, just knocking on your door in the middle of the night. And I mean knocking on your door, metaphorically. So he taught us to set office hours and say, I'm not available right now, when you would kind of feel like someone coming into your energy field, but I will be available tomorrow or whenever. So it sounds silly, but to set boundaries even with people who've crossed over so that we can have a life. And that's some of what I think Beecham learned how to do and he shared with us. And then, as I said in the intro, this was to me the big eye-opening thing, was that the person sitting in front of me, that what we call the sitter, the person who I'm giving messages to, wasn't really my client. The person communicating from the other side was the person who I was really needing to focus on and what they wanted to communicate. Like this was their time to get their message through. So that was a real shift for me. And I'm trying to think. Oh, yes. So I was thinking, what was the last part I wanted to share with you? And this was how I came back to the land of the living. So I would have continued doing this forever. It was so fun and so amazing to get to connect with the other side like that. And anybody who does it for any length of time, you can get good at it. It's a skill, just like anything else. And Beecham encouraged us all to kind of develop in this way. But I didn't really have the gift. I had a friend who joined at the same time. Well, someone who became a good friend. And he was a natural. I won't say his name because, like many advanced souls, he's very modest. But Beecham knows who I'm talking about, a fellow student in the group. And he just, hit the ground running, whereas I was just working at it. And I got some hits. Beecham will tell you, was able to develop some skills as a medium, but it wasn't quite my thing, or else I would still be doing it. But I was kind of neglecting my very alive husband who kept reminding me that I was a youth minister working at a Presbyterian church when he met me, and kind of what happened to me. He's a good Catholic boy, and I was kind of freaking him out a little bit. So I realized I needed to wrap up my time as a medium. And on the very last day, this is how these things happen. The very last day, a new girl had come into the group, and we were having snacks afterwards because you're always starving after doing this for a couple of hours. And she said to me, and Beecham probably remembers her name. I don't remember her name. Very sweet young girl. She said, since you already do hypnosis as a talk therapist, you've probably heard of Michael Newton. And I was like, no, who's Michael Newton? So I have on my slide, the end of my mediumship story, or the beginning of my life between lives story. Because basically I asked Beecham, who's this Michael Newton? He said, oh yeah, you should read that. And I read all of Michael Newton's books. If you haven't heard of Michael Newton, he wrote Journey of Souls, and then Destiny of Souls, and then Memories of the Afterlife, and Life Between Lives. And the Newton Institute has continued to publish a journal called Stories of the Afterlife. Um, and there's much more happening there nowadays. There's a Facebook group and Facebook page. But basically, probably you all know if you're listening to this, but Michael Newton discovered life between lives when he asked a woman to go to the source of her deep loneliness. She didn't go to a past life. She went to the time in between lives, where she found her soul group, her soul family, but she was working on independence. And so none of them had incarnated with her in this life. And so after I read Journey of Souls and all the others, I had to have my own sessions, and they were amazing. And in my sessions, they told me, stop being a talk therapist. We want you to do this full time. So that's my story of how becoming a medium, well, actually losing my dog, going to a medium, then briefly having some time as a medium, which I loved, and then discovering Life Between Lives hypnosis. That's my journey and how I got here. So let me look and see if I have any questions. I see people watching, and I know a lot of you will be listening later on. We're getting a lot of people listening on the podcast, which is wonderful. So I don't see any questions. So I'm going to move over to wrap up. Beecham is saying, hi, everybody. So I'm going to get rid of the slides and just see there was a couple things I needed to tell you. So the first one is that Beecham will be our guest next week. I'm so excited. So make sure you join us. My mediumship teacher is coming to share with us, and he'll share his journey of how he became a medium. I think the title is I See Dead People and It Doesn't Scare Me Anymore, or something like that. So he's been having experiences of connecting with spirit people since he was a young boy. So it will be really fun to hear you share about that, Beecham. So that will be next week. And also, those of you who've been watching and paying attention to our retreat, we had to do a venue change. And initially, it was a little bit of a challenge, but we went back to our original place, which was in Malibu, which is wonderful, at the Sarah Retreat Center. So please book a retreat discovery call if you're interested. Leticia, my assistant, will post it right now. There it is. And when you get the podcast, she'll post it there as well. So book a retreat discovery call. You can book it on my website on the retreat page. I think it says spiritual retreat. That's the tab. And then we can talk and answer any questions you have. But it's 3 days. We're going to have a past life session. Well, first, finding out your creative gift to the world. Then a past life session. These are all group sessions. And then a back to the womb and your pre-birth life planning session on the other side. So a little mini LBL. Yes, there it is. Thank you for sharing that, Leticia. So these are amazing. We posted some pictures. I'll be posting a little bit of videos in the groups where people come up front and we walk through their experiences together after the group session. So it's really amazing. We can't wait to see you. And if you have any questions, that's what the retreat discovery call is for. Oh, and she'll also post the promo code VIP for 15% off. So there you go. We hope you'll join us. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to join us next week where you will hear Beecham share that he sees dead people and it doesn't scare him anymore. All right. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.
Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow. and join us next week for another episode of Soul Guide.